I'm inspired to build guitars today to see what could be done, to see what still is out there that hasn't been invented yet. Best guitar should be the one you're building next. There's always something more. It's like every thought is an unfinished sentence.
Well, I made my first guitar when I was 16 years old. Built some tools. I knew how to make some tools because I'd taken a bunch of metal shop classes that taught me how to cast metal, form metal, work with machines, weld, all these things. Found a little book called Classic Guitar Construction by Irving Sloan, opened it up, and in high school woodshop, I made my first guitar. Book showed how to make a classical guitar, and through the techniques in there, I used those same techniques. I made a 12-string steel string guitar. And partway through that first guitar, it was like, I have to do this. It's all I could think about. I have to do this. Through my senior year, I decided that I'm not going to go be an architect or go be a whatever. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had to make guitars. That was a scary thought because in 1973, there wasn't really any guitar making going on like there is now. There wasn't really a place to buy materials. There was no books in the library. There was no videos or how-tos or YouTube or anything like that. Along the way, I found a job at this little hippie guitar shop called American Dream Music, and I learned how they made guitars. It was pretty crude. Met this guy named Kurt Listug who was there, and the owner decided, I don't want to do this anymore. I've got a couple bills I can't pay. I got a $1,500 bill to Gibson. Someone wants to pay me that and give me a little money. They could buy the shop and start a business. So Kurt and I did that. Yeah, Taylor Guitars was born. My role now is co-founder, senior advisor. I'm there all the time. Andy is now our chief guitar designer, and a good one at that. And he's taken on the president and CEO roles. I think we've got a great, bright future, and Andy's it. And I get to enjoy watching it. I started thinking early in my life about the end game, a succession. There's going to be a succession whether I want there to be one or not, right? I want a guitar maker at the helm. I want a guitar maker with the seat at the table. I started thinking about what kind of person I wanted. I knew it was a list of impossible things, and I put it away in my drawer. And one day I met that person. Andy was making guitars on his own, self-taught, incredible guitar builder, and a practical person, incredible musician, and he joined us.
I'm Andy Powers. I'm the Chief Designer, President, and CEO of Taylor Guitars. Having grown up in San Diego, there is a unique influence of that place on the things that we do. You know, you're the product of where you grew up, you're the product of your influences, and the things we make, they're like a snapshot of what that artist was like right then. Everyone's got a story. And so you go out and you tell your story. You write your songs, you play your music, you make your guitars in my case. You create what you're going to create. And I think we're better off because of it. When we want to build a guitar and we want to build something well with intention and have it come out exactly the way we want it to, you're going to look at any means available to make that happen. Sometimes that means hand craftsmanship. You know, sometimes it's best to teach a person to use a scraper and learn how to sand sides or learn how to apply a finish. Sometimes that's the best way. Maybe you build some tools to help them with their tasks. Other times it means you invent a robot or you invent a way to use a laser to cut a part out to an exacting tolerance. For the piece of wood, it doesn't really care what form of a tool is doing the cutting or the holding or the shaping. It's just going to turn into a guitar. We work through this process to go, okay, great, here's one instrument. Now, how do you turn that into something where a bunch of musicians could have one? There's no separation between, say, my workbench and our factory floor. You know, it's not like taking a design and then shipping it overseas to some other, you know, nameless, faceless factory that's going to try to replicate it. We're doing our work. We're making what we make. So we're going to take this instrument and we're going to design every aspect of it. We're going to tool for it. We're going to produce it. And so every one of these projects is a unique thing. It goes through its own life cycle.
I started playing guitar when I was 6 years old, and I played many different various types of guitars. I started playing bigger and bigger shows as things progressed, and realized I needed a much better guitar for performing live, one that was going to be high quality and dependable. And so when I was 10 years old, that's when I got my first Taylor. From that moment on, I don't think I could ever do without. They're amazing guitars. They go above and beyond. It is something that when you find that perfect guitar for yourself, you fall in love with it. And that's what happened with me.
When I think of Sweetwater, I find a real kinship with the teams there because they're in the same position of looking forward. What will the future of music be like? What is the life of a musician going to be like? How do we engage with our instruments? How do we acquire our instruments? How are we introduced to an instrument or a sound that we haven't heard before? How are we introduced into a piece of gear or a new invention that someone's making? You know, you're always at that front edge of what's the next step in my creative journey.
Hi, I'm Jim Curlin. I work on the marketing team here at Taylor Guitars. I'm the editorial director, the editor of Wood and Steel, our publication, and we are here at our headquarters in El Cajon, California on a beautiful sunny day. We're going to take a walk through the factory and show you a little bit of what goes into making our guitars. So we're going to start the tour today here in the milling department at Taylor. So this is where we're cutting some of those wood components into what you recognize as more guitar components. So for example, over here, we've got some neck blanks. This is mahogany, and these are pieces that are going to become necks later on. You can see they've already gone through some milling and surfaced, got a really nice smooth feel to them. Now this will actually make both the peg head and the neck shaft itself. And interestingly, we also cut the heel block from the same original piece of wood, same linear piece. So everything is really going to match in terms of grain structure, color, etc. So we're going to go through, we've gone through, we've cut this. We're going to be planing other surfaces in here. We'll see some, we can go over and take a look at some tops. I see some soundboards over here. We're surfacing those. So this is one of our rotoplaners right here. So as you can see, we've got a guitar top that's actually been cut. We're going to go into the milling area or into the laser room in just a moment and take a look at that. But here's a really nice rosette for one of our custom models. I will point out one other machine here in the milling area. This is a CNC liner saw. It's basically a CNC controlled bandsaw, which allows us to resaw some of the wood that we source. And this comes in handy with certain woods, like some of the urban woods that we're working with. So we've got ash and iron bark that we're using in the line, and that is sourced actually from Southern California. And so in some cases that will come to us in lumber form, and we could do some resawing work with this mill. What's cool about the saw is that this is a vertical vacuum table, so we actually can use vacuum suction to affix a piece of wood to it, and then we can use the CNC to control the dimensional cuts that we do. So one of the things that allows us to do is cut precisely. It also lets us reduce waste and make adjustments as we need to. And so everything we do in the milling department is really designed, obviously, to be accurate, but also to reduce waste as much as possible so that we can just be more responsible in our use of the wood that we work with. This next area that we're heading into is what we call the laser room, because we do some laser cutting work here. Over here, we've got a couple of our carousel clamps. And this is, these are machines that we use as we're gluing up tops and backs. So essentially, we book match our tops. So think about the top of an acoustic guitar. It's two pieces of wood that are glued together side by side. They originate in the same segment, same piece of wood. Basically, you slice it like you butterfly a steak. So they're gonna open up, and they're gonna have a nice symmetry. They're gonna have a nice structural consistency, matching from one side to the next. We're gonna basically edge join and glue those together, and then clamp them together in our carousel unit here. So you can actually see the glue squeeze out along the center seam there. This is going to be cut into the actual shape of the top or the back on our laser. And then we're going to make sure that we get that down to its precise thickness so that we can move those components further through production. So as we head over to this area, what we have in front of me here are 3 laser machines. And we started using lasers back in the mid-1990s. That was around the time that we were developing the Baby Taylor, which is a 3/4 size travel guitar. And now we use our lasers to cut the actual shape of the top, the back, the sides. We'll cut braces with lasers. We can cut other components, maybe that go on the underside of the top. What looks like we have here some really interesting inlay components that will be part of a rosette. So in some cases, we're going to write a program and we can use that laser to basically execute those cuts. And so from a design point of view, it really has enhanced some of the aesthetic capability in terms of how we can decorate our guitars, but really wonderful. So this is controlling it. It's basically a CO2 gas that is very focused as a laser beam. So it's about 8/1000ths of an inch. And it basically is going to vaporize the wood instead of having a tool bit that might dull over time or might chip the wood. So it's a really clean type of cutting tool. It's very precise. And again, because it's computer controlled, everything is properly aligned. So we've got looks like we've cut some of these rosette pieces in this particular machine. And here we're going to make our way into the rosette room.
So in the rosette room, we're looking at the rosette process, how we inlay those pieces into the top around the sound hole.
I'm Garrett Pollard. I'm the day shift milling lead. Been here for about 17 years, and I've been rosetting for over 10. So what I'm going to be working on today is a special model coming through right now. Is a 326 baritone. So it consists of these plastic purflings. As you see, we have the wall over here of different varieties. We got plastic, which I'm working with today, woods and fibers. First off, I'm going to cut all these in half. We'll take a couple of these black, white, black segments. I'm going to just put a scuff on them. There. That's going to promote the adhesion of the glue that we're going to be using later. And starting at the top of the guitar, gently working the purfling in. So on this part of the factory, we don't use any of the machines to do the work. This is all done by hand. A couple more segments here. I'm going to make a little sandwich of the black, white, black purflings with a solid black purfling in the middle. That's going to be my center ring. And since it's a little long, I'm going to trim it. And last but not least, this one is going to be a visible joint. So I'm actually going to make a cut with the X-Acto blade. So I have a very, very, very clean joint right there. Center it at the top. And make a little mark where I want my joint to be. Trim it a little long. There. There you have a rosetted 300 series guitar.
Computer mills are a really integral aspect of our production process here, and we've got one area of our factory where we have a lot of them set up. So we're going to take a look at things like how we carve necks and some of the other work that we do.
Now, as we head into this building, there's a little bit more machine noise, but you're going to see a lot of these types of machines across the floor. These are CNC machines, computer numeric control machines. We use computer mills for things like profiling the guitar neck, so getting that exact profile that we want that helps deliver some of that playability that people love about our guitars. By using a computer mill, you can write a program that controls that super precisely. So we've got the precision, again, the repeatability, and just some of the other things that we could do is we can cut fret slots, we can cut pockets for some of the inlay work that we're going to do in that, and all that is super precise because of the computer programming associated with it. And so the tolerances are down to about 0.02 of an inch.
I'm Ed Granero. I'm the Vice President of Product Development. Most of the guitar designs start with Andy. Andy comes up with an idea. You might make one by hand. You might just create a drawing. And it's at that point that we're then needing to get other people involved. Once we're all like kind of huddled around it and looking at it and go, yeah, this is something we want to pursue, we take that idea or drawing and then we get an engineer involved. And it's at that point that we get that into the computer. We create a model for it. And then we're off to the races, creating models, we're creating programs, we're creating fixtures, parts, you name it. That's sort of how the new guitar process starts. When it comes to other R&D that we're doing, whether for machinery or anything else, similar process, but with a broader group.
In the body assembly area, that's where the top, the back, and the sides that have been bent all come together to form the guitar body.
So the body assembly process, after the top, the back have been braced, the sides have been bent, that all kind of comes together in this area. Down here we've got some racks of bodies that are awaiting that process. And so we're basically going to use our carousel clamping systems here. So basically we're gonna set that shell up, and then we'll take its mated top and back, glue everything together. We've got a plate that'll go over top of that. We've got a wheel press here that'll help secure everything in place, and then we'll basically lock it in for about 25, 26 minutes. And from there, that body is ready to come out and go through the next phase of production, likely the binding work. The binding is obviously the strip of material that goes around the outer edge of the guitar body. You can see some examples of some wood binding here. What's interesting to point out here is that with wood binding, you have to pre-bend that because it's wood. So we'll actually use our automated side benders, the same machines that we use to bend the sides themselves, to actually bend the shape of the binding too, so that we can get that set up.
I think a lot of people think about Taylor as a larger company, a big manufacturer. We make a lot of guitars, but it's important to remember that there's an incredible degree of craftsmanship that goes into our guitars, and these are still very much handmade instruments. And I think a great example of that are some of the woodworking features like an armrest. We offer a couple of different types of armrest, but there's an incredible amount of work that goes into that, and it takes a high level of skill. We want to show all that goes into that because I think obviously it provides a lot of ergonomic comfort for the player, and we really think it's important from the playing experience. But it's really, when you see what goes into crafting an armrest, I think you'll come away with a deeper appreciation for all the work that goes into making the guitar. We want to show you the finish application process, and that's something that really involves some cool technology, both robotic technology and electrostatic attraction.
So the backstory on spraying finish is way back in the early days of Taylor guitars. We used nitrocellulose lacquer, which is a traditional finish. And while it was functional for what it was at the time as a material, there were some issues that we were trying to overcome. One was the curing time. You would spray nitro on a guitar and you would have to wait upwards of 12, 14 days as that finish air cured, as the solvents were released. So it was definitely kind of a long time in the production process. So in the mid-90s, we worked with a chemist. We came up with a new finish formulation. It was largely a polyester-based finish. And what was interesting about it was not just the material itself, but the fact that we devised a way to cure it using ultraviolet light. So that was a big deal because A, the finish itself was clearer. We could apply a thinner coverage of it. It actually was a little bit more elastic, so it didn't have that cracking kind of an issue associated with it. And then we could cure it in a UV oven. So instead of 12, 14 days, we're talking about a minute. That put us on a path to continuing to refine that process. It's also, by the way, cleaner from an environmental point of view, less VOCs and things like that. So what we're looking at here is obviously a robot in our spray cell. And there's another technology that we're using, and that's electrostatic attraction. So in the days of spraying by hand, even at point blank range with very, very high efficiency nozzles, et cetera, that finish, a lot of it wouldn't attract to the guitar. Some would go to the guitar, some would just go around it. And so there was a lot of overspray, a lot of waste. And so we were looking for ways to really reduce that. And we ended up coming up with this electrostatic attraction system. So what we're able to do is give the body of a guitar an electrostatic charge because it's got moisture content in it. So that allows us to do that. Inside our spray cell here, the robot will pick that up. It'll hold it under that rotary atomizer over there, and it's actually dispensing finish. That finish is given an opposite charge, so it's actually attracting electrostatically to the body. So you're getting much more attraction efficiency. So we're talking pretty dramatic, where once upon a time by hand it might have been 15, 20% of the finish that ended up on the guitar body. In this case, we're talking more in the range of about 85%. So I think just the first year alone we started doing it, we saved about $500,000 just in material costs. Once we get through the spraying process, that guitar will go from that spray cell and will be received on the other side and go right into the UV oven. So it's going to go through that UV curing process. So it's pretty seamless.
My name is Tyler Robertson, and I work in R&D and automation at Taylor Guitars for all things factory automation in our manufacturing, as well as R&D projects and product development. A robot, it's just motors connected to castings with a controller. It's no different than a CNC machine or a drill. Like it's simply another tool. It's something that moves in positions, it applies force. It's a positioning tool, and it's how you use it and how you apply it that determines the result. They're incredibly repeatable. I think to anyone building a guitar, if they had access to a 6-axis robot, they would be happy to do it, to have that, to perform tasks that they might find repetitive or that they want that accurate repeatable motion. We also don't replace people with robotics. We use it to augment processes or take away repetitive work so that it allows people to focus on detail work. Robots have only allowed us to prosper at Taylor so that we can hire more people. We've only become a bigger company since we've integrated robots into guitar building.
And we want to make sure that we introduce you to Buffy, our buffing robot. We want to take a closer look at how we use robotic buffing to handle the buffing process for us.
So we'll see a little sample of some of the robotic buffing work that we do. It looks like we've got a T5Z body here that we're loading up. Buffing a guitar body is actually one of the most physically demanding aspects of what we do. You think about taking a guitar body, whether it's an acoustic guitar or a T5Z, you've got a lot of curves and contours. And if you're trying to work that against a buffing wheel, it can be pretty physically demanding, especially if you're doing it one guitar after another. And so this is an area where we love technology because A, it takes the physical strain off of that part of the process, but it also brings more precision and consistency to the process. So what we have is a buffing robot. We call her Buffy. There's actually Buffy 1 and Buffy 2. We've been using buffing robots for over 20 years now at Taylor, and they're just wonderful. We can load a guitar body into one of these bays here, and one of our buffing folks will basically call up that program on the computer there, and that will activate that specific buffing program for that model. As you can imagine, we have a lot of different buffing programs because we have a lot of different models. So there's, again, a lot of geometry between different body styles, etc. So this will actually go through a whole buffing sequence. Typically takes about, say, 9 to 12 minutes or so to go through that sequence. Got a couple of different buffing wheels. We progressively go from kind of coarser to fluffier as we get more refined in that buffing process.
In this work area that we're going to show you, this is where we glue the bridge to the top of the guitar.
Well, this is an area I wanted to point out where the bridge is actually glued in place. These are some of the workstations that we use. This unit here, we've got vacuum suction so we can hold a guitar body in place as we're gluing the bridge. So here we've got some racks of guitars in which the bridge has been glued. So we'll actually put a masking strip over that area prior to spraying finish because the finish is sprayed first. Then we're going to peel that masking strip off that exposes the shape of that bridge area, and we'll glue the bridge in place here.
So really the home stretch of the building process for us is final assembly. That's where the neck meets up with the body. We're going to take a look at some of the steps involved there.
So we are now in the final assembly area. We also call it string up, but this is really the kind of the home stretch of the guitar making process for us. So at this point, we have installed the electronics in the guitar. So we've got our ES2 pickup in place here. We pointed out this pocketed area in the body. Below it, you can see a guitar neck. As we're getting ready to set the neck in place, this is a kind of an important tool for us. This is our, as our tooling department has labeled, it's our neck angle gauge, right? So what we're going to do is put this in the pocket, and this is actually going to give us a reading, and that will dictate which pairing of spacers goes into that pocket. So you can see some of the different spacers here on the wall, and they're laser cut. They're also tapered in graduated increments of 0.02 of an inch. So what that allows us to do is calibrate, based on that reading, the neck angle and set that precisely. So that those spacers will be dropped in. We're going to bolt that neck in place in 3 areas, and then we'll complete the assembly process. So eventually the guitar is going to be strung up. We're going to go through a final set of inspections. Now, really a guitar part or guitar parts as they move through production are always undergoing some quality assurance inspection before it moves from one department to the next. So people sometimes wonder, when you get to the end of the line, how many guitars don't make the grade? We usually, if there's ever an issue, we usually catch it early on in production or in that area. So a guitar won't progress. We don't want to do a lot of work on something that's going to be wasted. So we make sure that we have steps in every area to inspect that part to make sure everything is absolutely to our quality standards.
So thank you so much for taking the time to see some of the highlights of our factory production. Obviously, we've given you just a little fraction of what we do. There are literally hundreds of steps involved in guitar making here. And hopefully at some point in the future, maybe you can come to the factory and take a tour yourself.
These days, sustainability is a hot topic, and it's important. It's important for companies and makers, individuals to be thinking about. And our journey into what might look like sustainability is a little more core to who we are and what we do. So it started from self-preservation, right? We look at our livelihood, we look at the guitars that we build and go, wow, what's life gonna be like in 10 years? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna make? What are we gonna make it from? And it dawned on us, starting from 20 or more years ago, the world is changing and we better change with it. Now, for generations, guitar makers have lived like hunter-gatherers. You know, you go out into a forest somewhere, you find what you need, you take it, and you're good to go. You know, you can make what you want to make. And we're at a point in life where that doesn't really work anymore. We can't live like hunter-gatherers. We have to be farmers. We have to actually go and propagate what we want for future generations of instrument. And so a lot of the things that we work on, the way that we build our guitars, the way that we organize our production, the way we decide on how to design a certain instrument, it's going to take into account the materials and where they're coming from, how you might source them in the future, and what that would let you do to build a great instrument. And so it's very core to what we are, who we are, and what we do.
My name is Scott Paul. I'm the Director of Natural Resource Sustainability at Taylor Guitars. Bob and Kurt, in the earliest days as a fledgling company, were obviously hyper-focused on efficiency. And efficiency is the first and often forgotten tenet of sustainability. Be more efficient, use less. That was always baked in, hyper-baked into the Taylor DNA. Because I think Bob he's a bit of a visionary, and he sees changes in the forest, and he sees changes in his ability to buy wood to build guitars from the early 70s till today. And some of those changes at various points in time would be pretty alarming if your business depends on getting some traditional tone wood species from different parts of the planet. When things start to change, and the three changes are changes in price, get a little bit more expensive, changes in geography, well, I can't get it from here, but I can probably get it from there, or changes in quality, then you know that the resource is under stress. And Bob was noticing that and reacting. Building high quality guitars and focusing on sustainable sourcing are by no means mutually exclusive. I mean, if you look at the evolution of the guitar, the Taylor guitar, or guitars, you go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and you look at guitars, the quality of build of guitars across the board continues to improve. I mean, Taylor's instruments have never been better built, finer instruments than they are today. And I think you're just going to see that improve. You know, it's great that we have Andy Powers, and he's really a deep, deep, deep thinker and really understands the instrument at a very profound level. So he's able to make modifications to the design and build to react to a changing resource. And I'm here to tell you, the resource is changing. I actually think that guitars, musical instruments in general, can play a profound role. The guitar transcends culture, it transcends language. This thing that is wholly dependent upon healthy natural resources from around the planet. Generic example, the neck is mahogany from Guatemala or Fiji. The fingerboard is ebony from Cameroon. The back and sides is koa from Hawaii. The soundboard is spruce from Canada or Alaska. If those resources aren't healthy, you can't make the instrument. So it's a perfect combination of a product that is universally beloved, crossing political, cultural, social, language lines. And it is wholly dependent on healthy, intact ecosystems surviving. So it's just an unparalleled prop to get people's attention. West Coast Arborist is the largest arborist in the state of California. They service some 350 municipalities across the state into Arizona. They, I believe, are the only Arborists, the only entity in the world that is capable of providing us with what we need for a dedicated line.
Welcome to West Coast Arborists Urban Wood Recycling Yard. We trim trees for communities that trim trees, over 320 different communities we serve, and from that we create a lot of green waste. And instead of just running it through a chipper or turning it into firewood, we are kind of like the pallbearers, and we bring these fallen trees into the afterlife. And in that afterlife, they get to make sweet music for maybe longer than they survived as a tree in this harsh environment here in Southern California. As you look around, we got all this wood stacked up. It takes a long time to dry wood. You want to treat it like a sweet baby and put it to sleep for 2 or 3 years before it's ready to work. Here we've got blackwood acacia, also called Tasmanian blackwood, guitar parts. So these are going to be acoustic backs and sides. So if you come in, this is the first stage where we're breaking down the log, we're quarter sawing it over there, comes off as long lumber, and then we cut specific sizes out of it. Not every piece, probably 50% of the wood is good for a guitar, and the rest of it we save and goes to our retail shop. But these are all, so this is going to be a 5-inch, this is going to be a back. This whole stack's going to be recut on the sides into length, and this will make backs, or sides, sorry, 5-inch wide sides.
So John, Tasmanian blackwood has been used to build guitars for a long time.
Yes.
When was it introduced to California? What is Tasmanian blackwood doing in the state of California?
That's right. That's kind of weird, right? 1851 was the first time that it was documented, and it was a couple years after the gold rush. Australian nurserymen brought in Acacia melanoxylon, which is Tasmanian blackwood, right? They want to bring the trees, and they thought it would be a good environment. And now, throughout San Francisco, there's about 50 different species of acacia, and you can find them, predominantly in that area because that's where it was planted back in 1851.
So how many species are you setting aside for Taylor guitars? Like, how many tone woods have you found so far?
We got the black acacia, Acacia melanoxylon, Juglans californica, the black walnut. We've got red ironbark eucalyptus, which is a huge win. So that's the latest one. We've also got chamois ash in the mix, which is Fraxinus udii, native to Mexico, brought here in 1930 by a guy named Archie Schammel. So they call it chamois ash, locally kind of exciting.
So we've got 4 species that are currently introduced to California, occasionally come through your sort yard, that Taylor Guitars is using for urban woods. There's probably a couple of more that we just haven't done the R&D yet that could be promising tone woods.
If you look at the end here, you can see it's a quarter. It's a quarter of a log. So you always hear the term quarter sawing, or maybe you've never heard the term quarter sawing. But quarter sawing is a pattern, the way you cut the log. So we'll cut a quarter out of it, then we'll take a board right here, then we'll take a board right here, we'll take a board right here, a board right here, and that'll keep the rings of the tree going up and down in the board. And it's got more uniform shrinkage. You guys want to learn more about shrink? Quarter sawn wood doesn't shrink in the width, it only shrinks in the thickness. That's why it's good for a guitar. So now you can see where all the defects are and how we have to cut around it. And he puts a little bit of water on there to make the color pop, and it just makes it oh so beautiful. This is blackwood acacia here. Not like an easy task to get guitar parts out of this log. There's a lot of waste, but downstream we're going to recover all that and use it in other products that don't have that high, we take the best out of it for the guitars, and the rest still lives on a beautiful life somewhere else.
So this is urban ironbark from Australia. It's probably one of the most drought tolerant of all the eucalyptus. It comes from kind of interior Australia where it's super hot, super dry. They planted it all over San Diego County, at least. I don't know about LA. And as far as we know, never before really used as a tone wood, at least not in kind of a production model line. And people absolutely love it. It's what you find. It's a new sound. It's a new tone wood that would never have been discovered, perhaps, if it wasn't planted in California and Taylor and West Coast didn't form this partnership.
Before this partnership, every stick of these got turned into firewood. So we really have made a big impact. So as the logs come in and we cut them to size, so we recut the ends, we coat them in wax because wood wants to be in equilibrium with the humidity in the air. And Southern California, I think we're probably like 25% humidity today. And that means all these logs are trying to go to 3.5% moisture content, which is like crazy. That doesn't even happen, you know? So they're just trying to give off water like insane. So we'll cut them and we'll coat the ends with wax and we'll put them underneath the sprinkler. So if we go over here, you'll see this is the log deck for Taylor, and we've got all the logs under sprinklers trying to keep them swollen. Taylor salvaged all the chamois ash logs that were available, which is kind of crazy. This whole stack will probably take us 2 weeks to process into guitar parts. So parts that are going to be guitar parts will wrap up like this. Completely wrap them up so that they stay nice and moist and they can dry by the experts at Taylor Guitars. If you're a wood nerd or if you're into drying wood at all, nobody does it better than Taylor. It's like, wow, incredible. We don't make lumber here at Street True Revival. We make lasting memories.
This is kind of the dawn of an era where we're deliberately planting and growing wood as if it were a crop. That's never been done. You were looking at what might be available to you when you cut it down. Well, we have an opportunity to plant the kinds of wood that we want for future guitars. We have the ability to design for what the materials will allow, you know, and discover the new materials that we might someday use, as well as being aware of the way people are going to play these instruments. So there's a lot of fresh, new inspiration that's coming because musicians are always looking forward at what's going to come next.
One of the many things that I have always admired about Taylor guitars is the versatility that they all have for all of my playing styles. You can kind of go anywhere with them. With the rhythm, single note leads, the fretboard tapping, and the body percussion, they've always been able to handle all of it. I can play these styles with comfortability and ease just because these guitars are just so perfectly set up. When I have people come to me and they ask me, what guitar should I get? You know, even if they're a beginner, even if they're an incredibly advanced guitarist, I always suggest getting a Taylor guitar. They're so easy to play and they become your friend. I've been a Sweetwater customer ever since I've been a Taylor player, and it's really helpful and incredibly convenient having access to the Sweetwater Guitar Workshop, because whenever I need it, I can bring in my guitars to them and they can service them and set them up, and they get it to exactly the way I need it.
It's always great to see the term Sweetwater and the term Taylor guitars kind of put together, because from my vantage point and working with Sweetwater for the better of my career, they almost work in harmony. They work at the speed of sales. They'll take the uncompromising approach to make sure that the right thing is done for the end user before their own entity, and it's collaborative. You know, so when you think about all the guitars that Sweetwater sells and all the Taylor guitars that Sweetwater sells, there is a level of confidence that when you're willing to dream up something and bring it to life and offer the reasons that it deserves to live, and then you hand that to somebody who's gonna effectively take it and go, I got you. I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna make sure that it ends up in the right spot. And I'm gonna do that over and over and over, and not for you, and kind of for me, but for us. And I think that level of partnership is what paves those little yellow bricks for a very long way. And it allows the companies to grow together and be open with each other about how can we best serve the customer. And I think that's what's put Sweetwater in the driver's seat when it comes to customer management, player management. It's like, I'm willing to take care of you because I've earned my opportunity to do that.
I love Sweetwater guitars. I love Sweetwater. I can tell anybody that's listening that this business is customer oriented. We make a good guitar to start with. You guys bring these things in and you care enough to unbox them, look at them, look for a fingerprint, look for a scratch, set up a guitar special for somebody. You call and go, hey, I'd like this set up this way. I play fingerstyle, I play this way, I play that way. Double check, put another eyes on it, see if something happened to it on the way to the store. Then that guitar is going back in a box. So when you get that guitar, you're the first person to own it. It hasn't been, played on a store wall. It's a wonderful way to receive a guitar.
And so with Sweetwater, in the way that they look at distributing instruments, the way that they're going to introduce instruments to musicians, the way that they're going to take care of the instruments within their sphere of influence, it's like we see a lot of commonality between Taylor Guitars and Sweetwater. So I'm thrilled to get to work with you guys. Why does a person pick up an instrument? Because they want to play one more. They want to do a little better, express themselves in a new way. They want to find something new. They want to revisit an old favorite. There's always something that makes you keep going with your artistry. Whether it's playing a song, whether it's building an instrument, there's always something more.